our way of defining terms a little bit differently than maybe mainstream. We sort of deal with crisis, in our conception of things, deal with crisis a little bit differently than this very proactive and healthy way of continuing to advance the organization. Simply by asking yourselves, hey, are we succeeding on all levels? I mean, you could be great in one area and really be failing in another, and that, you know, to a large extent can be considered a crisis and perhaps should be considered a crisis, but it also starts to shift into, as I was saying, this kind of less spoken about area of how are we defining our success? And in turn, how are we adapting to constantly stay ahead of trends and stay ahead of the times? Because these are challenges right in front of us every day, right? I mean, tomorrow is going to be a completely different day than yesterday was. So what are we doing as an organization to stay ahead of that and to adjust and change accordingly? And when you talk about success, I mean, I just think that's such an overwhelming concept. I mean, what does that even mean? Because I could be the best dad in the world and just be an utter failure as a business person, but you know, how do you reconcile that? Does that mean I'm a failure as a human being, or does that mean I'm somewhere in the middle, or what does that even mean? So we use that story of Tufts University and their Lacrosse program to really highlight this concept of continually redefining success.
I believe you talked about Mike Daly, right?
Yeah, Mike Daly and his efforts to advance this team. And it's really an amazing little story, right? That I'm pretty confident few people have heard. But you look into that team, academically, Tufts is a well-recognized institution, and oftentimes people consider it as a successful place to be. And then you, at a certain time, about 10, 15 years ago, you put the microscope on their lacrosse program and it's horrible. They were not good. Enter Mike Daly, a guy who had never played the sport, and he rose the expectations. He said, perhaps we can be a little better than we are. He learned, they learned, everyone started to grow, and they started to win. But what's so fascinating about that story, and why I think it highlights this idea of what is success and how can we continually define it so that we as an organization can evolve, is that it was never good enough. There was always this idea that maybe we can be a little better. We had 5 wins this season. Well, maybe we should shoot for 6. We started winning in conference. Well, maybe we could win our conference. You know, we won our conference. Well, maybe we could win the national championship. And these questions just naturally resulted because of their competitive drive, their desire to be as good as they could be. But what's interesting when you look at this particular story is it didn't stop there. Because then it was, well, we won a national championship. Well, maybe we could be, you know, really outstanding students and athletes. Well, maybe we can do a lot more as it relates to community service. Well, maybe we can have our individual athletes who were not only competitive, but excelling in the classroom, all-American athletes. Maybe they could go on to serve the country. Maybe they could go on to serve nonprofits. And these questions started to just take this program to a completely different level, and now they're just operating in this mode of success. So just that idea of continuing to ask, you know, how can we be successful and never stopping, I think that's actually one element of sport that I think business can really learn a tremendous amount from. Because one thing that sports provides is a very clear start and finish. You have your 2012 season. You have the preparation that leads to the 2012 season, but when that final whistle blows, it's over. And you either failed or you succeeded, and depending on where you fall, you have motivation going into that next season. And you also have answers about what we did well, what we could learn from, and so on and so forth. And that's one element that I would love to see more businesses, it would be exciting for me to see more businesses experiment with this idea of finite projects, essentially. You're going to be on this project for 6 months. And in the process, we're going to have very clear measurables that you failed or you succeeded, and we're going to be able to analyze that at the end to learn and move forward. I also think there's a motivating element to that too.